Hello everyone, my name is Tori. I'm a professional freediver, deepest human in the Western Hemisphere for now, and journaling was one of the ways that I uncovered how to equalize all the way to 122 meters. I developed my own personal equalization profile over 2 years ago, and it works every time. It's foolproof. It never fails. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly how I did it so that maybe you can do it too. Okay, so I realized in my last video about journaling, I told you conceptually what it was, why it worked, and told you what to do. But I didn't share specifically exactly what it did for me, and so I think I owe it to the audience to at least explain exactly what it did for me. If you want to know what it is and why it works and conceptually why it makes sense, look at the other video. In this video, I'm going to tell you how it works and exactly what it did for me. What specifically I started to benefit from doing this. So, to begin, I'm assuming a lot of people have a dive watch. I had a Suunto at the time, and it would tell me where I was in the dive at every second of the dive. So while I was journaling after my dive sessions, I would look at the watch every second of the dive, see where I was in the dive, how fast or how slow I was going, what I remembered, what I think I remember, and what I think it all means based on the time and the speed that I was going. I would contemplate exactly what I think it means. And in many cases, I'd be wrong. But at least I would have some data to back up the feelings and the experiences that I was having underwater. That's pretty key. I would say if you don't have a watch, you should still be doing this. You should still be journaling. You should still be writing out notes. But if you don't have any actual data, it's kind of all in your head. And so I would recommend at least using whatever your dive watch is providing for you, whether it's a full dive time, a descent time, where you are in the dive at every second. I think that's super crucial. Knowing how slow or how fast you are in the first part of the dive versus the end of the dive, the middle of the dive. I mean, it speaks volumes about what's going on underwater. So anyways, after my dive sessions, I would get my dive watch. I would look at every second of the dive and every single dive that I did. Remember what I did, what I think I did, and contemplate what it all means. So at first, I was just journaling and I started to think, how many times am I equalizing between 30 and 60 meters? This wasn't a goal to figure this out. I just started to think. I was journaling. I was in a weird meditative state, just thinking thoughts. And subconsciously, I started to pay attention to this during my dives. I never told myself, hey, Tori, start counting your equalizations the next day on your next dive. No, I never did that. What I did do is I started to wonder and think about it. So subconsciously, the seed had been planted. And then the next day when I would go to journal after those dives, I'd be like, oh my God, I think I equalized maybe 4 times. I wasn't trying to pay attention, but subconsciously my body started to pay attention. And then when I got later to the journaling that afternoon, all of a sudden the number of EQs that I was guessing in my head from the day before was becoming more and more accurate. Eventually it got to the point where I was journaling and I was like, oh wow, I only equalized 3 times. And I knew for a fact I had only equalized 3 times between 30 and 60. And this was without ever telling myself, okay, your main priority today is to count your EQs between 30 and 60 meters. I never did that, but subconsciously I planted that seed, and subconsciously I started to pay attention, and subconsciously I started to count my EQs, and I didn't even recollect it later until journaling. I was like, oh wow, I only EQ'd twice today between 30 and 60. It got to a point where I was like, how many times do I really need to EQ? So I learned that I could actually apply a certain passive amount of pressure between 30 and 60 and not equalize at all, and just keep a certain amount of pressure in my headspace. Mainstream freediving will call that constant pressure. I call it passive pressure. I don't like the idea of like constantly pushing. I think it gives the wrong intention. Constantly pushing and straining, that's just what I think when I hear the term constant pressure. I prefer the term passive pressure. So I learned that I could do this all the way to 60 without even a regular frenzel. But I also realized I wasn't as efficient when I did that. So I started to count upwards. Instead of 2 equalizations, instead of just no equalizations and passive pressure, I would equalize just once in between 30 and 60 at 45 meters. And this seemed to be my most optimal equalization profile. Eventually, I scaled this up because I started to get deeper and deeper, and what you're seeing on the screen is my exact equalization profile. And what's funny is this is foolproof. It works till this day better than anything I've developed, and I developed it over 2 years ago now. I've tried on 2 occasions to rework this equalization profile to something that may be more optimal, and every time I've tried to do it, it's failed. I haven't been as efficient. All of this is to say that something that I developed in journaling over 2 years ago still stands true till this day for myself when equalizing. I learned this foolproof plan of equalization over 2 years ago just by journaling, taking my watch data, writing it all down, contemplating what it means, what I think it means, and going from there. You can develop theories on this. You can develop principled experiences that you can draw from. So it's just like a freediver to try to change something that works. We'll have a beautiful, amazing dive, and then on the next dive, when we go to repeat it, like, oh, let me change my wetsuit. Let me change my nose clip. We change these huge variables when things are going right. Totally freediver thing to turn around and try to change something when everything's already working. And so it's a little bit of give and take. Freedivers are so notorious for this, changing things that are working when they're working. I've done it on 2 occasions thinking, okay, well, I made it to 116 meters with my equalization profile. I want to go to 120 meters plus. Maybe I need to change something, but I wasn't struggling. So I tried to change it, and what did I do? I struggled. And so I went back to what worked, Old Faithful, my equalization profile that I developed. And there's no question at all that I developed this, and I couldn't have done it without my watch data and journaling after every dive session for a few months straight. I started to learn this. I started to plant these subconscious seeds that started to teach me things over time without making it a priority during the dive session. And I would just look at these things after the dive session, and I would learn these very valuable things. I think this is the key, most important thing that I've learned from journaling for myself in my experience. I've also learned how to control other Tori. Other Tori is Tori under Narcosis. I don't really have control of that guy, so he kind of takes over during the dive sometimes. So whenever I need other Tori to do something, I learned how to train him. And I learned this through journaling and finding ideas of how to train the other guy if I'm never really fully there. When I'm in extreme narcosis, how do I train that guy? Well, it's through visualization, and I learned to start doing visualizations through journaling. I started to develop ways to visualize every dive so that I could train the other Tori. But that's another story. I just wanted to share with you my exact experience and exactly maybe the most beneficial thing that I learned from journaling, and hopefully it can help you. I go over the concept of journaling itself and why it will be beneficial to you in the other video, so check that out. And eventually I think I'll just combine all the videos and make a longer video. But until then, I hope this helps. I hope it motivates you to get on that pen and paper or get on the notes app and start journaling and start writing things down from your dive. Look at your watch data, think about what you remember, what you think you remember, and contemplate what it all means. I promise you'll develop these amazing theories that nobody could have taught you, but you can teach yourself.